you already have Reagan's Lugo Waka locked in. So there was 2 spots left to fill the void that Brady Singer left with the 180 innings that he pitched last season. So Michael Lorenzen now, to me, at least early on in the year, he's going to slot into the 4 spot. However, back end of the rotation, 4 or 5, however they want to divvy it up.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome back to another off-season edition of One Royal Way here on Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Joel Penfield. Thank you so much for hanging out here. I'm glad to be back after a couple months. Haven't done anything really since the Jonathan India Brady Singer trade. There have been a couple moves that have happened since then, so I wanted to dive into that and what the Royals should do over the next month and a half or so before pitchers and catchers report to spring training. Before we do that, be sure to thank Emprise Bank, our partners in Possible here at KC Sports Network, member FDIC, for their support of this show and everything else we do at KC Sports Network. They've been a huge part of us since day one. Before we dive in, also be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and on the audio platforms on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. We want to keep driving those numbers up for the 2025 season. So thank you very much for that. Going right into it here, we do have some off-season moves that the Royals have made. Some small ones. We'll get to the Michael Lorenzen one at the very end, at the end of this little part here. A couple minor league deals that have happened. Taylor Clark and Junior Fernandez, relievers. Taylor Clark sounds familiar, I'd imagine. Pitched for the Royals in 2022 and 2023. Spent last year in AAA with the Milwaukee Brewers. Junior Fernandez hasn't pitched in the big league since 2022. It's a big fastball, but not a lot of command to go with it. So both of these signings are purely organizational depth, which is what Taylor Clark should be at this point. If he had a 5 ERA between 2022 and 23 in Kansas City. So if they need a reliever, if there's some injuries or ineffectiveness with the current roster, then sure, you can call him up in a pinch, but I'd imagine he's just going to bide his time around in Omaha, and maybe an opportunity comes around, but I'm not going to bank on it. And if they do have to go to him in a big spot, I'm not sure, or even a small spot, I'm not sure how I feel about it. Junior Fernandez, I think, is purely just he's going to pitch in AAA. The command is too bad for me to believe that he's even going to get big league time unless he magically turns things around. Career whip is around 1.7. So I'm not gonna bank on too much there, but it's a minor league deal is a minor league deal. Like sometimes you get your Sam Long, sometimes it's nothing. So I'm not gonna concern myself too much with it. A more interesting minor league move that came about as well was Cavan Biggio. Signed him to a minor league deal as well. I'd imagine he's going to get an invite to spring training as well. This one's a little bit more intriguing to me. He has not been a great big leaguer throughout his career, about league average hitter, referred to as a super utility player when it was announced that he was getting that minor league deal. And I think the super utility term is an odd one because it usually refers to a player that is not very good at everything, but does a bunch of different stuff. So it's kind of a term of endearment in a way. But he does play second base. He plays some third. He's played a little bit of first. You can play the corner outfield spots. That positional versatility is something the Royals really like. It's what they had in Adam Frazier and Garrett Hampson last year. I think he's going to fill that role in some capacity. And I think he can be a little bit better than those guys. He's at least league average against righties as a pure left-handed hitter. So there's going to be platoon opportunities. Maybe you can get a Michael Garcia off his feet if they really need him to. He can play the corner outfield. You can platoon it with a Hunter Renfroe if that's the path they want to go. But I do think there's a spot for him on the big league roster. If I were to make a prediction at this point, and as the season gets a little bit closer, I'll do a roster projection as we get through spring training. I would probably have Cavan Biggio as a bench player for this team in 2025. Not going to play every day, maybe a couple times a week if the situation really calls for it. a late game at bat against a right-handed reliever if they need some power. But that's probably about it. I don't have super high expectations for Cavan Biggio. This is an all upside move because it's a minor league deal. If it doesn't work and he's bad in spring training, it's going to mean nothing. But I think there's still enough juice left to squeeze with him that it could work. Some things that I do like, and the Savant page is not awesome. He's almost a complete Deadpool hitter. But when he's able to pull the ball in the air, his swing is super effective. The launch angle sweet spot percentage on Baseball Savant, it's 37.3%. So that means he's hitting the ball between 8 degrees and 32 degrees of launch angle, which is optimum for batted balls. And when you add in the fact that he hits the ball well to his pull side, that means that he's able to optimize his swing and optimize the way he hits the ball to be effective. And we know that Alex Zumwalt and Keone Dureni and the hitting staff do a very good job of maximizing guys' swings to hit the ball hard. So maybe some time in the cage with Alex Zumwalt and company for Biggio, they're able to maximize what his swing can be and get a little bit more out of him. Another nice thing is he does walk quite a bit, 10.7% last year, around 13% for his career. Not something the Royals have a ton of still in this lineup. When it comes to getting on base and not needing to, swing a ton to get on base. And he doesn't chase a lot, which fits into what the Royals lineup does anyways. There's some stuff to like here. I'm not super high on it. I'm not going to go on and think he's going to be a difference maker, but can he, I don't know, be 10% better than Garrett Hampson and or Adam Frazier? That's not a high bar to clear. So for what the Royals need from a Cavan Biggio, I think it could work. I'll be curious to see how he looks in spring training and how they decide to deploy him. But it's a name to watch out for and a name that is very likely to me to be on the opening day roster in 2025 when they open up at the K. The biggest move since the Jonathan India trade that the Royals have made, Michael Lorenzen, 1 year, $7 million deal with a $12 million mutual option for 2026. If the mutual option does not go through, it's a $1.5 million buyout if they decide to move on after 25. I like this move a lot. I liked what I saw from Michael Lorenzen, a 1.57 ERA coming over from Texas. Pitched for Kansas City down the stretch. He had a hamstring injury that kind of hampered him down the stretch. He pitched a little bit in the playoffs, but he was very, very good for this team. And what Brian Sweeney and Zach Bove did for him, maximizing his arsenal, which is wide. He's got 6 or 7 pitches that he uses. They tweaked it, and he went from being a okay pitcher in Texas to being very solid for the Royals. This was from Lance Brozdowski. Completely forgot his name for a second. In his Substack, Lance's pitcher notes, this is from back in August, and I believe I brought this up with Jordan and Josh last season, but they changed up Lorenzen's arsenal quite a bit coming over from Texas. He threw a slider quite a bit. That was one of his out pitches. He almost ditched that entirely. He started throwing a sweeper. He doubled his curveball usage, and he increased his changeup usage from 12 to 20%. This also dropped his four-seam and sinker usage from 60% to 44%. This was something, and that was a pitch he was using a lot in 2-strike counts, was a lot of 2-strike count, four-seam sinker fastballs. Not great when his fastball isn't that effective. A lot of what he is able to do is use the off-speed stuff to work the fastball. He pitches backwards more often than not. And especially versus lefties, which killed him. Throwing those 2-strike fastballs was what killed him a lot of times against left-handed pitching. Instead, they dropped that from 54% to 32%, throwing more off-speed pitches and 2-strike counts rather than fastballs, and it pushed his swinging strike rate from 13% to 18%. That's a massive difference. That's a huge jump in a very short amount of time. His fastball location, they changed that up. They completely changed Michael Lorenzen. And it made a massive difference for him, and he was very good for what they asked of him, which was be our 5-starter, be our 4-starter. That's what they're asking him to do now. You already have Reagan's Lugo Waka locked in. So there was 2 spots left to fill the void that Brady Singer left with the 180 innings that he pitched last season. So Michael Lorenzen now, to me, at least early on in the year, he's going to slot into the 4 spot. However, back end of the rotation, 4 or 5, however they want to divvy it up. If they need him to go to the bullpen, he can. The JJ talked about wanting a swingman type guy that can handle bullpen or starting roles. Lorenzen's done both throughout his career fairly effectively. But I think he's going to be given the opportunity to start, at least at the beginning of the season. We'll see where things go, depending on the health of some of the guys that they believe can be starters for this team. But you slot him in there. Now this moves the 5 spot to maybe it is Chris Bubich, who they believe is a starter, and he believes is a starter. Maybe it is Kyle Wright, who sounds like he's going to be ready for 25. It might be delayed a little bit. I read that in Andy Rogers' newsletter, which is a little different than the reporting all of 24 was. He was on track to be ready for spring training. I don't know if there was a setback or if they're just taking it slow, but Kyle Wright could slot into the rotation there. Alec Marsh can slot into the rotation. There's still other guys maybe they can go make a move for as the market continues to slow a little bit heading into spring training. But it raises the floor of the rotation significantly, and it's not just relying on the top 3 guys to do carry the load. Lorenzen can carry some of that too. Or they want to move him to the bullpen. It shores up the bullpen, and it is a steadying force there too as they try and figure out the bridge to Lucas Erceg if they decide Chris Bubich isn't the 8th inning guy anymore. They're going to have to figure some stuff out there. But Lorenzen adds an element to this team that they didn't have before, and to get him for $7 million for probably just the one season in a market where the pitching market blew up like crazy after Michael Waka signed his extension. Massive credit to JJ Piccolo for getting that done and for not overpaying or needing to overpay for Michael Lorenzen when the market was going nuts and guys were getting $12, $13, $14 million for similar or worse production than what Michael Lorenzen gave the Royals at the end of the 2024 season. So I'm excited for what that is going to do. On the other side of this break here, I'm going to talk about what else the Royals can do and how they should attack the next 4 to 6 weeks of the offseason heading into spring training. We also have a couple Twitter questions to answer as well. So we'll see you on the other side of this break. We'll be right back.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Thanks, you guys, so much for hanging out with me on this off-season show. I know we're getting into NFL playoffs and everything, but baseball's just around the corner too. So I'm excited for what this season is going to bring for us. There's still some time left in the offseason. I know that people started to panic is the wrong word, but people were starting to kind of get antsy for the Royals to make another trade and kind of build on the momentum of 24 and continue to add to this roster and, spend more money and things of that nature. I think the market really slowed down after the Juan Soto signing. And so like Teoscar Hernandez, there were some bigger moves that happened kind of early on, and people kind of expected that was going to move the market, but I think it's almost moved in the other direction. There's a chance that some of this is hinging on Roki Sasaki, who is coming over from Japan, and he's going to make a lot of money. And I think teams are kind of sitting around in a staring contest, figuring out who he's going to sign with and who he decides to go with. And then other moves can happen from there. At least that's on the pitching side. Even on the hitter side, like Anthony Santander is still sitting out there. Alex Bregman is still sitting out there. Maybe the market is hinging on them too. But I guess we'll see as we get. And Pete Alonso still sitting out there as well. So there's still a lot of guys that are available for the Royals to take if they want to. I don't know if they're going to add anything more like significant at this point. It's probably going to be more depth, like another depth piece or two, like what they did with Michael Lorenzen. There's still some bats out there that can kind of fill what people have thought they need, that middle order power bat. That's something that JJ brought up. Or just a guy that can lengthen the lineup a little bit. Some names that are still sitting out there, at least on the outfield side. Jurickson Profar still out there. That was a name that we brought up early in the offseason. Switch hitter, can handle some, even if it's not a leadoff, like a top of the order type role, and play a okay enough outfield, but it doesn't really matter. Austin Hayes is still out there. Maybe there's a platoon situation with Melendez there. Jesse Winker would be cheap. He kind of resurrected some stuff this year with the Braves and the Nationals. Dylan Carlson, if you really wanted like a buy low option, I still think there's some juice left to squeeze in there. Not a ton, like Randall Grichuk, but I'm not sure if he's necessarily the power bat, quote unquote, that people want him to be. There's not a ton left that are like massive difference makers, unless they did want to dip into the Anthony Santander pool. And if they wanted to do that, maybe the fact that he hasn't signed yet, maybe that means the Royals can get him at a little bit better value, and they don't need to overpay, a 4 for $80 million. Maybe it's more like 4 for 65. And if they're able to do that, it keeps the payroll down in a reasonable place. You get a difference maker. I would still like to see them make a move like that, but I'm not putting my eggs in that basket because I just don't know. When it comes to relievers as well, a lot of guys sitting out there too. The reliever market really has not moved. The guy that might be holding it up is Tanner Scott, coming off a really, really good season between Miami and San Diego in a walk year. It sounds like he wants a 3 or 4 year deal. If that's the case, then that's probably what's hanging a lot of this up. But you're still going to have Carlos Estevez still sitting out there, a guy that we talked about quite a bit as a trade piece that got traded to the Phillies. Paul Sewald is still out there. Scott Barlow, if they wanted a reunion there. Some other names. Let's see here. There's a whole bunch. I'm looking this up sight unseen. So Lucas Sims, Shelby Miller was all right in spots for Detroit last year if you want kind of a more veteran guy with a decent fastball. Andrew Kittredge is a solid option. And you're going to be able to get these guys probably on a 1 or 2 year deal. Jeff Hoffman was a name I liked as well that can handle some late inning stuff. There are still names, and I think that either the price is going down or the price is too high for anyone to blink. But it's hard to know right now because the market hasn't moved on a lot of these guys. So we're still kind of in a wait and see spot. The Royals are not alone in not doing a lot this offseason. So I guess then the question goes to, can this team contend, and is this roster good enough to contend in 2025? And I still believe that it is. I don't know if they'll be able to take a massive step forward from 2024. It may be a lateral step or similar. As it sits right now, I still think this is about an 85 win team. And even if you look at like the expected wins last season, with some of the bullpen struggles, the Royals were actually like I think Pythagorean had them around 88 or 89 and they won 85. So this is not, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to take a huge step forward, but I also don't think they're going to take a huge step back either. They return a lot of the roster. You add a Jonathan India, you bring back a Michael Wacha on a pretty solid deal. Bobby Wood Jr. continues to get better. You have some stability in the bullpen and in the rotation and in the lineup. Vinny Pasquantino will be back. There's still a lot to like. There's still holes to fill, certainly, and there are still parts of this roster that I have my questions about. But with where this team is at, I think they're in a pretty good place to still contend. And if they go and get an Anthony Santander or a Jurickson Profar, it'll raise the ceiling of this team. I think the floor is pretty steady, like at 85-ish, plus or minus a couple. You add a Santander or a Profar to raise the ceiling of the offense, maybe it's closer to 88. And in the AL Central, which is generally pretty unpredictable, that could win the division or at least be close to it. Because who knows if Detroit's step forward was legit. I think it is, but we've seen teams in this division flux year over year. I don't know what the Twins are going to do. I think the way last season ended really, that could bury a team. That could kill the morale of a team going into the offseason and it carry over. And they really didn't make a significant move. GM and manager still there. Cleveland, I never know what to do about Cleveland most years. So they could be good. But I also don't know. There was some smoke around trading Clase. I don't know if they're still going to do that, but it was something that I saw around the winter meetings time, that it was a possibility. If they do that, then I have no idea. He's so good at locking up games. I'm not sure. Jose Ramirez is great and Stephen Kwan is good. Outside of that, I'm not sure what I'm going to get most of the time from their offense. And they rely on a lot of young pitchers, and they're a pitching factory, certainly, but there's still some volatility there. The Royals are going to be in the thick of the AL Central race. I think it's probably between them and the Tigers, and Cleveland is probably between those three, to be honest with you. I'm going to fade the Twins. I think the way last season ended, it was going to be a massive concern, and the White Sox are still a disaster. They're not going to be as bad as they were last year. At least I don't think so. I don't think they're going to be 121 wins bad, but certainly probably in that 100 loss range. Don't have to worry about them as much. We got a few Twitter questions here to go into. And thank you for everybody that dropped those in the replies. I'm going to probably try and do that, at least for the off-season episodes, and during the regular season, I'll at least try to do this a couple times a week if I'm able, to get a few of these questions done without doing like a full mailbag episode. This is from KC Sports Kingdom 1. People are clamoring for another bat via trade. And if they were to acquire one, whose plate appearances would you want them to be taking? So there's still, David Lesky, tweeted it today that there's still some smoke that Taylor Ward might get moved. Whether that's to the Royals or not, I don't know. I think there's still a possibility they go get Taylor Ward, but if they were going to go get Taylor Ward, it probably would have been to be the leadoff hitter, and that's why you got Jonathan India. I don't know if Taylor Ward is my 5 or 6 hitter, has the same value, probably. But if they didn't trade him, then I refuse to understand the Angels organization because they're so bad every year, and it sucks because Mike Trout is just wasting away. But they refuse to have any sort of rebuild, and they keep spending money on players that it almost never pans out, and they're going to keep being bad. So keeping Taylor Ward doesn't make a lot of sense unless they have deluded themselves entirely into thinking they can contend for a wild card spot. Then they're going to keep him until they're out of it in mid-May, and then we'll probably be having this conversation again in June and July leading up to the trade deadline of whether the Royals can go get Taylor Ward or not. If it were Taylor Ward, then obviously that would take at bats away from one of MJ, Renfroe, somewhere, probably those two guys specifically. This is also dependent on what they decide to do with Jonathan India. Is he going to play second base every day? Is the Michael Massey to the corner outfield stuff legit? Is that going to be a part of it? Is Michael Garcia going to move to the outfield and India plays third and Massey plays second? There's still some roster shuffling that hasn't gotten discussed very much yet. But I would imagine if Ward comes in, it's a platoon-ish situation with MJ. And then I don't know where that leaves Hunter Renfroe, because it sounds like I think Hunter Renfroe pretty cut and dry based on his salary is going to be on the big league roster going into this year. So maybe I think it honestly might take at bats away from like a Dyron Blanco or a Joey Weimer, who are guys kind of fighting for the fringe of the roster. And if you bring in a Taylor Ward, then that's going to clip, into MJ Melendez probably being a more bench type guy, or Hunter Renfroe becoming a bench kind of hired gun type guy in certain situations. So it would be really interesting how it works out. And I'm not sure if there's even a name to go and try and get at like third base or something like that. I know Nolan Arenado's out there, but that's just not happening. The Royals are not going to take on that money unless the Cardinals chip in a ton. That'd be the only way that would happen, and I don't think it does. So it would be more in the outfield specifically. And John Hall, who's follows our stuff on Twitter as well, had a similar question about who they should trade for. Ward, I think, is still the not number one draft pick, but the most likely if they were to make a move. There was talk around it at the deadline, but I'm just not sure who else is out there at this point. A lot of trades happen at around the winter meetings because the GMs are together and all the reporters are there, and that sourcing happens super fast. I don't think, like, it's hard to know if anything is being talked about right now and whether a move is going to happen right now or not. I'm not going to bank on it, but you never know. Maybe the biggest move of the offseason was getting Jonathan India, trading Brady Singer, and then it's just some depth moves from there. And we'll see what happens at the trade deadline. They did a really good job at the trade deadline last year. So, we'll see where it goes. Last one here from Derek Lynn on Twitter. Top 3 free agent targets left, and then opening day lineup projection. I love this. Thank you very much for both of these. I think Santander is still one for me because he would make such a difference in the lineup. Take some pressure off of Salvador Perez, take some pressure off any Pasquantino. Legitimate 30, 35 homer power. Even at Kaufman moving from the AL East, I think his power still plays. He's a switch hitter. Lengthens the lineup quite a bit. You don't have to have Michael Massey hitting 5th. You can hit 6th or 7th. You could even move Salvador Perez down to 4th or to 5th or something. And then you can have Santander sandwich in between Vinny and Salvi, another run producer, another guy that can get on base at a decent clip. I think that would be probably my number one pick. And then the other two, I still like Profar quite a bit, but with India coming in, I'm just not sure where it fits because it sounds like one of like an India or a Massey are going to move to the corner outfield. At least that's possibility. That was what was talked about around the time of the trade. So there's still some moves to make. Maybe Jurickson comes in and then there's another move after that. But if you can get him and play left field and maybe hit, top of the lineup or even, hit him 2, move Bobby down to 3. I'm not sure how they play it, but that would be one that I would still like even at this point, even after having Jonathan India in the rotation or in the lineup. And the last one, I still like from a reliever perspective, still like Jeff Hoffman. I think he fits into the Royals' budget. I would obviously love to have Tanner Scott, but I think he's going to command too much, and it's not money that the Royals should spend on a bullpen piece at this point. I think Hoffman would be cost-effective and effective on the mound. He can handle some late innings. He can help bridge everything to Lucas Erceg, and you'd have a really nice spot, in the rotation or in the bullpen for probably a 2-year deal. He's 32 years old. Probably can get him, I would imagine, kind of on the Chris Stratton deal, like a 2 for 12, 2 for 14. I would do that in a heartbeat for this guy. He's got multiple years of being really effective. A higher velo fastball, so it's not all off-speed stuff, kind of like with Stratton. There's not as many walk issues. It absolutely fits what they would need to do. From a opening day lineup, I'm doing this as presently constituted with who is currently on the big wig roster. I'm not going to project a Jurickson Profar or Santander or anything like that. I would go, let me pull up the roster just to make sure I don't double anybody. India 1, Bobby 2, Vinny 3, and I'd probably have India playing second, I guess. Bobby at short, obviously, Vinny at first, Salvi catching. I'm going to go Massey in left or right field, probably right field. Renfroe DH, MJ in left, Michael at third, and then Isbell in center. That would probably be how I would do it. And then I'd have Cole Reagans on the mound for opening day. I think that's still a decent lineup. I think that's a lineup that could work, at least for the beginning of the year, and then you see where you can improve going into the trade deadline, and hopefully the Royals are still in it and are buyers, just like they were last year. Still a lot of offseason, so a lot to happen. I'm hoping we're going to get some big news so I can hop back on here and talk about it. If not, probably about 3 weeks or so leading up to pitchers and catchers reporting. I'll hop back on here and we'll break down some more offseason stuff and get ready for the year. Really appreciate everybody listening to this. As I mentioned at the beginning, be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that notification bell and the like button so that you know when these episodes go up. And then be sure to turn on notifications and follow on Spotify and iTunes and Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. Hit those notification bells as well so you know when these episodes go up. And we will be more regular as we get into the season. Just with the off season and the NFL machine being the way it is, I'm willing to take a step back for right now and let them do their work. But tons of awesome stuff here at KCSN right now, and I'm very grateful to be a part of it. Looking forward to the 2025 season, and I'll talk to you all soon. Take care.